Seriously?
Hello, welcome to Seriously English for Brazilians. My name's Josh Gashel. This lesson, do I really have to say it, is going to be awesome. It's a complicated lesson, and it's one of the most difficult topics for Brazilians because in English, it's actually a pretty complicated thing to ask questions. And that's what this lesson is about, asking questions, but only in one specific situation. All right? Stay with me. This specific situation, which is one of about 57 different ways you can literally ask questions in English. I'm going to show you how to ask questions, yes or no questions, in the simple present and the simple past, with all verbs except modal verbs and the verb to be. Yes. Because there are other options that you can use with modal verbs, with the verb to be, in all the other different tenses, and with all the other different verbs. All right, so I'm going to say this one more time. Yes or no questions in the present and past simple, with all verbs except the verb to be and modal verbs. You are welcome. Let us begin. First, I have to explain something. In English, maybe you've heard of auxiliary verbs and helping verbs, helper verbs. Questions in English are so difficult that we actually need help. We can't do it by ourselves. We have to have other verbs to help us. In some cases, in this particular case, when we're talking about the present simple and the past simple, or those two verb tenses, we actually have to add some verbs. We have to add a specific verb. And I'm going to explain all of this, okay? So to begin, I want to give you, as I do, a comparative sentence in Portuguese. How are you, as a Brazilian, thinking in Portuguese of the question? And this all happens very quickly. You're thinking in your mind the question, and then you translate it into English. And that is where the mistakes are made, that interference from Portuguese. So I'm going to give you a question. This is an example question in Portuguese, and we're going to break it down in English to show you what happens, okay? Are you ready? That's a yes/no question in the present simple with the verb to be. It's a whole different lesson, okay? Did you catch it? Let's go. Okay, here is our simple example sentence. Here's our example sentence in Portuguese. Você gosta de inglês? Of course, the answer is an obvious yes. And because we're talking about yes or no questions, we're going to break this question down. This isn't a question you might have in Portuguese. We're going to break it down bit by bit, step by step into English. How our mind will go through the whole process of creating the question correctly in English. Before I begin, remember I told you that in order to ask this type of question, yes or no, present simple, past simple, with the verbs, all verbs except the verb to be, and modal verbs, you actually have to add an extra bit of language to help you. And that extra bit of language is called do support. Do support exists in all of the more than 6,000 languages on our planet, basically, legitimately, only in English. English is the only language, apart from like some Welsh, Celtic, kind of Britannia languages, old school languages, and some strange dialect in the Italian Alps. But do support is used in English to ask questions in the affirmative, to ask questions in the negative, and to give negative answers. We need this do support, and this is a whole lesson we can talk about at some other point, to do these different things in English. We need this support because apparently English is, well, I don't know, but it needs some kind of support to do this. While in Portuguese, which I love, and this is why I like to compare and contrast, in Portuguese, all you do to create a question is change the intonation. You change the intonation, I just made a question in Portuguese. Você muda a entonação? Você muda a entonação. That was a question and the answer. In English, though, it's more complicated, a lot more complicated. And in this case, we need the do support. So what I'm talking about in terms of do support, we have to actually use the verb to do. And we're going to see, first let's break it down into the present simple and the past simple, so you can see what the verb to do looks like. So let's do this little conjugation. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Okay, watch what happens. I do, you do, he, she, it does. And this is an important bit that changes. We do, they do. Now, in the past simple, watch what happens. It's all just did. All right? That's the verb to do in the present and past simple. These elements of this verb conjugation are what we're going to need to create the question in English in this particular context. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this out of here. Let me see if I can arrange this and this. Let's group that. I'm going to move this out of the way here. Okay. Let's move that out of the way. Let's get this over here. All right. So now, are you ready? What we're going to see here is we're going to look at the subject, the verb, and the object. These are the bits in Portuguese. We're going to see how they compare in English. And we have to ask some questions. We have to go through kind of a checklist of questions in English in our mind to come up with the correct formulation of the question in English. So let's take a look. I've created a pretty cool mind map of this checklist that you can go through to get to the question that you're looking for. All right, let's take a look. All right, so here we have our question, Você gosta de inglês? And beneath, we have this kind of checklist. This is a mind map of what actually goes on in your mind as you formulate the question. So, let's ask the first question. Is it a yes or no question? Yes, this is what we're talking about. These are yes or no questions. Then we ask, what tense is the question in? This is very important. What tense is the question in? Você gosta de inglês? This is the simple present, the present simple. So in our mind map, we have two options. We have the past simple or we have the present simple. Well, let's follow that. What tense is the question in? It is in the present simple. Okay, let's follow that. Is it the verb to be or a modal verb? Well, we have two answers to that. Yes or no. No, it is not, because it's the verb gostar, the verb to like. So it's not the verb to be or a modal verb. So let's follow that down. We come up here. So then we come to the next question. Is it the third person singular? He, she, it? No, it's você, you. So we have yes, third person singular, or third person singular, no. Let's follow that. Shebang! We actually have the answer to how we formulate this question. We need do, which is the do support, followed by the subject, which is you, followed by the infinitive of the verb without to. The verb is to like. So the infinitive without to, do you like? And then the rest of the question. De inglês, do you like what? The object. Remember, this is the object. Do you like what? Do you like English? There you have it. That's the question in English. Do you like English? Você gosta de inglês? Do you like English? There's the do support right here, followed by the subject, followed by the verb in the infinitive without to. And the mind map gives you all of that, all of those different options. And this is just for questions in the present simple and the past simple. I'm working on the complete mind map that will encompass all questions, but I think it will melt my mind. So I'm a little bit worried about that. So this is the present simple. Let's look at another question, and we're going to change it up a little bit. All right, now we've changed the question up just a little bit. So let's follow the mind map. Let's follow this checklist that we have to go down to find out how we ask the question. Again, this is a yes or no question. Ela conhece o chefe? Ou sim ou não. Não tem outras opções. There are no other options. So, the next question. What tense is the question in? Ela conhece o chefe? This is the present simple. So we have two options. We have the past simple, or we have the present simple. So let's follow this mind map. Is it the verb to be? So here's the verb. Conhece, conhecer. Is it the verb to be? No. Is it a modal verb like will, would, can, could? No. So those are our two options. Let's see. Uh-oh. Well, that line's going to stay there. So a verb to be? No. Let's follow this over here. Is it the third person singular, he, she, or it? Here's the subject, ela, she. So that is the third person singular, she. So let's follow that. Yes. Let's go up. And here we have it right here. This is how we ask the question. So, does, followed by the subject, she, followed by the verb in the infinitive without to. The verb conhecer, to know. Let's get rid of that to. Does she know? Does she know who? The boss. Who's the boss? Great show in the 1980s with Alyssa Moreno. She does know the boss. In this question, ela conhece o chefe? Does she know the boss? There we have it. It's a simple checklist, and we have to remember these things about the do support in this context. The present simple, the past simple, with all verbs except the verb to be or modal verbs. Now let's throw it into the past. The next example we're going to see in the past, okay? Okay, as I said, we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to take a look at this yes or no question. Eles viram o show? How do you ask that question in English? Let's go through the checklist, shall we? What tense is the verb in? Well, let's locate the verb here. Viram. That's the verb. That's the past simple. So, what tense is the question in? Buyakasha, past simple. Let's follow that. Is it the verb to be or a modal verb? Well, what is the verb? Viram. That's the verb ver in the past simple. Viram. Is the verb to be? No. Is it a modal verb? No. So let's follow that. And we have come to our answer. We use did. This is our do support. Did, the subject, followed by the subject, they, followed by the infinitive of the verb without to. This is the verb ver, in English, to see. What's the infinitive without to? See. Did they see what? So here's the subject, the verb, and here's the object. Did they see what? What's the object of their seeing? Did they see the show? And of course, we're talking about Dave Matthews, Some Devil, live, amazing show. I saw him when I was in college before Dave Matthews was even Dave Matthews. He was playing in a barn, and it was amazing. That's a tangent that we will come back from right now. So, eles viram o show. Did they see the show? Here is our do support. Here is the subject. Here is the verb in the infinitive without to. And then here we have the object, the show. So, subject, verb, object. And it follows the same pattern as Portuguese. That's helpful, but we have to remember to add this do support. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I apologize. from all native English speakers. What are you going to do? It's just something you have to remember. So this is just one single part of asking questions in English. And as an English teacher, hold on one sec. Here's the confessional part. I wanted you to see my face in all of its glory and in unmajesty. But as an English teacher, probably one of the most difficult areas that Brazilians have trouble with is asking questions. And I say, and I really believe this, I think that there are about 3 things that Brazilians need to know. And if they know these 3 things, they have a really good grasp of the English language. And the first thing is the dates. How do you say the dates in English? That is another lesson. We will see that at some time in the future. So how do you say the dates? The second thing are conditionals. The conditionals are really difficult, but luckily they follow the same exact pattern as Portuguese. That's very helpful. And the third thing that I say is that if Brazilians get questions, if they can get all the different types of questions, then they've got it. All right? So this is one step down that path towards getting questions and, in the end, getting the English language. So I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been the first of many lessons on questions. Stay with me. I know I ran a little bit long, but I tend to do that. And I apologize, only just a little bit, because I'm also giving you a lot of input. You don't know this, but this is another lesson that we can have. Input is super important. So, my last bit of input, thank you for listening. I'll see you in our next lesson. Cheers. Bye-bye.